Hey everyone. In today's episode, Brittany and I are covering the basics of Ayurvedic herbalism. So, we'll be touching on a few of the many different ways that we can work with herbs in Ayurveda to support common women's health ailments. So, we'll touch on things like period cramps, digestive issues, mineral deficiency, yeast infections, joint health, skin health, and much more. So, whether you are brand new to working with herbs or you already have a strong relationship with working with medicinal plants, we hope that you'll learn something new and find this helpful. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for being here and enjoy. Welcome to the Ayurveda for Women's Health podcast, where we simplify ancient Ayurvedic wisdom into practical guidance for everyday life. Between the overwhelming wellness trends, quick fixes, and conflicting health advice out there, we return to a science that has been around for thousands of years. I'm Rita, an Ayurvedic health counselor.
And I'm Brittni, an Ayurveda practitioner. In a world that disconnects us from our bodies, we are here to guide you back. Through body literacy, practical tools, and time-tested science, we will help you step boldly into a more empowered, aligned version of yourself. So let's dive in. This podcast is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Views expressed do not represent our employers. Well, I am excited today because Cocodona is happening, and if anyone out there is a fellow ultra runner and enjoys watching the live streams, then we should connect because this is a safe space for you to talk about it. It's very exciting.
And for those of us who are not ultra runners, do you want to explain a little bit more what that is?
Yeah, maybe some context. Yeah, the world of ultra distance running and biking has become a spectator sport where you can watch a live stream of these races happening and watch these little dots of people on a screen through the live tracker, because everyone has a tracker on, so you can see where everyone is at all times on this course and on this route. And these are like multi-day routes, so this is day 3 of Cocodona, and it goes all week long. So the leaders are just finishing, but there are people that are only at mile 100 of 250, so they will be out there for like 4 more days running, hiking, crawling on this course to like get to the end. And it's just amazing to watch and see everyone from like the leaders that are going so fast to the people that are out there for like 7 days just grinding through this course. It is just so fascinating to me. And I have not done a race this long. I've volunteered at other races, and it's just such an amazing community to be a part of. And I think what I enjoy even more than trail running itself is watching these live streams and just seeing what people are doing and like how they are just navigating and their strategy and their fueling and their crew. It's just an impossible sport to do alone, which is also like such an amazing part of it. Where crewing is like even harder than racing. And I've had people tell me that as well. They're like, this is so much, I would rather be racing than crewing because crewing is really stressful. You're like supporting, you're like responsible for this person and like making sure they have everything they need at the right aid station. So it gets me very excited to like watch it and to talk about it. So I haven't slept very much this week because it's so exciting. So yeah, I always appreciate like fellow nerds like myself who enjoy watching these races or racing them if you enjoy racing them. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your excitement. I can just like, when we got on the call before we hit record, Brittany was just beaming and was like, I have to share my screen and share this with you. So it's, yeah, I appreciate your excitement about it. And I mean, goodness, that's impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely came in hot on this call where I was like, Rita, look at my screen. Like, look at what we're doing. And the other amazing part in this race specifically is that Rachel is leading the overall race for over 100 miles. Like, she's not just the first female, she's the overall leader of the race. And it's just setting such an amazing precedence for what's possible for the, female body and what it can do. And I'm just really inspired by watching her tackle this course and just like full head on. And yeah, it's just really inspiring, I think, for not just women, but for all people watching, seeing her throw down on this really rugged course.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring.
Yeah. Super inspiring. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll have
Yeah.
to, when we end this episode, you'll have to give us a recap and let us know how she's doing,
I
depending on
will.
how long we end up chatting for.
Well, yeah, she might be like done. She has 5 miles left, so we'll see where she's at after our call. But yeah, it's really really cool to watch. And I think for me it just feels like it's awesome that we have these live streams now, because we can just get a sense of like what goes on out
Mm.
there and like what it is like, and you can really learn a lot for your own racing and strategy just by watching like what they do at the aid stations and what they're eating and how they're fueling and like the support they have. Yeah, it definitely makes me want to go sign up for all of the races like right now. I was very close to entering the lottery yesterday. But I was like, okay, just like let the excitement calm down and then make a decision about this.
Amazing. Well, like I said, I'm loving seeing your energy. I can't say ultra running is something that I know a lot about or that my body feels excited about. Personally, I've run a half marathon once in my life, and that was enough distance for me. But I can definitely
Yeah.
appreciate the idea of like someone who's super passionate about skiing and backcountry skiing and hiking, and I definitely understand the idea of when you're around other people who also love those sports and just how much you can work each other up and get each other hyped. And it's just it's a really powerful thing to find something you're passionate about in life and you really enjoy doing that makes you feel really alive, and also connecting with other people who enjoy that passion, even if it's not physical, if it's like knitting or cooking or whatever
Yeah.
it is. I think it's an important thing to find our passions. So it's nice to see you so lit up and passionate.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been watching the live streams the last couple years. They've like really grown. And I just get so tired from watching the live stream. We kind of joke with my husband. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm running the race. Like, I feel like I just ran 250 miles. It definitely is not at all like that. But I have that same kind of feeling in the body of just all that excitement. Just like so excited for them to be doing it and like watching them do it. I feel just as much passion for seeing them like succeed and push themselves as I do if I was doing the race myself. So it's just a neat community that I love, even if I'm not running. It's just like so fun to be involved
Yeah.
in. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Amazing.
Thanks for letting me excited about my weird nerd passions of trail running.
Anytime. Anytime. Oh, so yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we're talking about today?
Yeah, well, and to support a lot of what I do is supporting my
Mm.
body and using herbs in my recovery and my prep for running. So yeah, we're gonna get it more into the different ways to use herbs, thinking about them medicinally, and understanding why we use them and how we use them, and kind of more of the nuance of using them to support the body and to support specifically even female health and hormonal health and menstrual health. So I think herbs are really fascinating in that you can get really targeted with them in how you use them. And I think that Ayurveda really offers such a beautiful way of understanding those different
Mm.
applications and how we can integrate them into our everyday life to bring balance and to bring support to how we're feeling emotionally, physically, things that we have going on. So yeah, we'll kind of understand and explore some of the history of the herbs and like why we use them the way we use them, like where that came from. and we'll understand like the different properties of the herbs and how to think about the energetics and why we think about them in that way. We'll talk about the different formulations and the differences between them because that's a topic that comes up a lot with clients, right? Do I use a tincture? Do I use a powder? Like, what do I use? And then also talking about, yeah, the different ways that we do use them as teas, as powders, even incorporating them as medicinal ghees, right? So pairing them with other either plants or foods or ways that we can get really targeted with how they're helping us. And then some other practices and ways to incorporate them that are not ingesting them, right? So how we can use them topically and on our bodies and through other practices that can be really helpful and supportive.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation. I probably say that on all of these episodes, but I really love talking about herbs. I find herbs so fascinating. I think it's really interesting. Like, there are so many different schools of thought and systems of medicine and lineages and cultural uses of herbs. We can look at the folk medicine aspect of herbs. And I think it's really fun to look at the same herb from different lenses. But I agree with you that I think Ayurveda offers this really beautiful, I would say, nuanced, but also simple way to understand herbs and understand whether or not an herb is a good fit for us. And I also think, and you kind of alluded to this, but I think compared to other systems of medicine and systems of herbalism, I think that Ayurveda offers some unique ways to work with herbs as well. So it'll be fun to chat about those a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think highlighting my training is in Ayurvedic medicine and Ayurvedic herbalism, and there is some really lovely overlap with Western herbs as well, and some of them come into play in Ayurvedic medicine. And I think, and maybe we'll get into this in kind of the history a little bit, but part of Ayurveda too is recognizing, well, what's available to
Mm.
you, like what's around you and what's surrounding you. And I think that you don't always need to be, like, ordering these herbs that are really far away, like, how can we see these plants that can support you with the environment that you exist in? And that is also Ayurvedic philosophy, is that it is utilizing the resources that are local and already attuned to your energetics, your environment, and where you live. So, just highlighting that piece is that there are these different systems from different places in the world, and Ayurveda recognizes the importance of knowing what's available to you in the place that you live currently.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think that's such a good point because I think what we end up seeing is these herbs that get kind of trendy, right? So we'll see, I think ashwagandha is a great example. It's gotten trendy, or like shilajit has gotten trendy. And we also are looking at herbs in a time of, the stage of capitalism that we're in and just this like consumerized version of herbalism and how herbs are marketed to people. And I think what that ultimately can lead to is farming practices that are not sustainable. And to your point, I think that while there will always be exceptions to this, I think that so often we can look locally and the earth is giving us the herbs that are in alignment with the qualities that are what we're experiencing based on living in that environment. And herbs have evolved with us from the beginning of time. I don't know if you've ever read the book Braiding Sweetgrass
Mhm.
by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She talks in that book about how in some native languages, the term for plants translates as those who care for us. And so we really can understand that herbs have been here from the start of time to support our digestion, to support our hormones, to support these transitions that we go through as humans that are tough on our bodies. And we need to be in this reciprocal relationship with herbs and make sure that we're utilizing herbs in ways that are sustainable and supportive for the earth. When we're using herbs more intentionally, that's what's going to be best for our body because everyone shouldn't be taking ashwagandha or shilajit or whatever it may be. And we'll talk about that and figuring out what's best for our bodies when we're working with herbs, but also again what's best for our planet.
Yeah, I think it's a really helpful way to understand the impact on both like the macrocosm and the microcosm because it does come into play. And I think it's very easily overlooked in the quote wellness industry, right? It's like we've had this conversation many times that we need to understand the individual within how we're addressing imbalance and with that individual's environment and what's around them and where that can help come into play as opposed to like just always outsourcing um and causing that extreme harvesting or like extreme yeah, I guess what you're saying, like that globalization of what everyone needs at certain times and those waves that just kind of take out the herbs, right? It just like wipes things out as opposed to nature moves in smaller increments. And like the example I give is think about the shift of daylight, right? It doesn't go from, well, one day we have 5 hours of light in the winter, and then we hit spring equinox, and now we have 14 hours of daylight, right? It's like this like slow, gradual progression over time. And it's the same thing with how we're balancing our bodies and using herbs and like taking from the earth and receiving from the earth. We're doing it in these small increments that create sustainability along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just call out that this is something that I'm continuously learning about and continuously trying to improve practices in, as I imagine you are as well. And I think one thing that's helpful for me, I appreciate that I live in Vermont and this isn't available for everybody, but trying to find local farmers and local herb growers and just having some communication with them and seeing where, again, you can source more locally and just like appreciating that it's a process of learning how to do this and just calling out that I'm still learning it myself.
Yeah, and because I think it is always changing too, and so just being attuned to starting with one thing at a time and seeing like where can you find a source that's most like supportive for those different factors, because you can't overhaul everything at once, so you got to start slow
No.
and move forward. Because like where I'm sourcing things from now is not where I was sourcing things from 5 years ago, right? It's been that evolution process, and I will continue, right? There's still things that I'm like, oh, okay, I want to find a better resource for this or whatever it is. And just continuing to move in that direction is, sustainable and doesn't burn you out
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, good. I'm glad we could sort of ground into this conversation by talking about that because I do think that's an important part of this. And while I appreciate different lenses beyond the Ayurvedic lens on use of herbs, I think one that I'm always wary of is, again, this idea of like, oh, this herb is good for this.
Mm,
Or I think sometimes I've even heard people have this viewpoint of almost thinking of herbs as like these vitamins and like the more the
mm.
better. And I think, I say that as someone who loves to use herbs and uses quite a bit of herbs
Yeah.
in day to day. But it's this balance of like, again, using herbs with intention. And I think if we transition into how Ayurveda looks at that and kind of breaks that down, there's these different factors that Ayurveda is always considering when we're figuring out if an herb is a good fit for an individual. And so one of those things is we're, of course, always looking at the individual's constitution. So the elements, the qualities that are in excess in that individual. And that's both your constitution, like your prakriti, the ratio of elements that doesn't change throughout your life, but also looking at the current qualities that are elevated in terms of what's going on in any imbalance in your body, as well as the qualities in response to the environment that you live in and going into different seasons. And then we're looking at the qualitative properties of the herb and figuring out, does that balance, does that imbalance? While still considering, like we mentioned earlier, people think of ashwagandha for the nervous system or maybe say like licorice for the throat, like certain herbs do have an affinity for working on a certain tissue layer or working in a certain organ system in the body. So we are looking at that, but then also getting more granular in terms of the qualitative properties. Is the herb heating or cooling? Is it drying or moistening? Is it mobilizing or grounding? And is that in alignment with the qualities going on in the individual or not? And really this last factor that Ayurveda is always considering with herbs is the individual able to digest it? Because some herbs can actually be difficult to break down. And in that case, we maybe are going to use that herb, but bring it in a different form. So, always considering that digestive piece and altering the form to be in alignment with that.
Yeah, it's a really important part. And we talk about this a lot in clinical class. We're always talking about if we're putting together a formula of herbs, we start with, like, just like you said, we're taking in all of those considerations and looking at what the imbalance is, being really targeted with what herbs can help. But then we're always adding in a digestive. And some of those herbs may already be digestive, but we would add in something, right? Kind of even our go-tos like CCF. We have cumin, coriander, and fennel. Like, all right, add a little bit of fennel in there. If it's pitch constitution, some heat imbalances, the fennel's going to be a little cooling, and it's going to help support breaking down these other herbs that are much more heavy or potent. And it's a really important place to start. And again, we come back to digestion always in everything we're doing and considering, because if we're not supporting that, then none of this else is really going to like have as much of an effect in the way that creates balance or creates healing. So yeah, super important and a really interesting aspect of how to use herbs, right? It's not just take this, shoot it down, take it like vitamins, like you're saying. It's like we're being really thoughtful and intentional and taking in these other considerations. And I will say, this is something that you can learn how to do this, right? Obviously, working with someone's really helpful, but this like criteria, so to speak, doesn't need to be unachievable for someone to be able to approach this at home. And we'll talk through some examples of ways to help and where to start going with this. But I guess I just want to add that too, where it's like, yes, there's this criteria. And I think with herbs, you can begin to just kind of see how they feel in your body by taking them in small doses and seeing like, well, what does this pair feel like together? What does ginger and red raspberry taste like as an herbal blend? So I think there is some just being open to the creativity of it in small doses, right? You're not going to like just go and take a huge thing of it if you don't know how it feels. And even in school, they taught us this, right? Take it a little bit and see how it feels and really get to know the herb and then move on to the next one and like try it at different times of the year. So a little bit of a tangent, but relative to like putting the formula together and like how to start thinking about them in combination.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I do think there can be both these ends of the spectrum where there's like people trying to use all of the herbs and thinking of them like vitamins. And then I think there's the other end of that where there can be a lot of fear around herbs. And I do think to your point that in general, most herbs we're going to look at as being pretty gentle. And we'll talk about some gentle ways to start and work with herbs and what in Ayurveda we call like tridoshic options. Tridoshic meaning it's balancing all three doshas, so it's supportive for most constitutions. So if what I described earlier sounds a little too technical and you're like, oh, I don't know that this is going to be supportive for me unless I go work with somebody clinically, there's absolutely ways to dip the toes in. So I'm really glad that you mentioned that. And I think that's the best way to learn is through our own bodies. So yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the individuality.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Going back to what you were saying earlier, Rita, with right, like turmeric for inflammation, ashwagandha for vitality and, nervous system. And, there's all these kind of blanket statements floating around out there of using herbs. And to give an example of kind of the criteria you just outlined there of like the things worth considering when we're taking herbs. So ashwagandha, obviously great for like stress and the nervous system and resiliency and vitality. The first time I took ashwagandha, I was having a lot of vata and pitta imbalances. And that I got so overheated taking ashwagandha. It just like aggravated a lot of those pitta imbalances. So I was having more night sweats. I was having more anger. I was seeing just more irritability. Now, like that was a couple years ago. Now I take ashwagandha when it makes sense as part of my toolkit. If I am, for a number of different reasons, I might take it. But I don't have that same experience in taking it now in getting overheated. So at that time, it was adding to the imbalance. It was a little too hot. It was like a very heating herb. Is creating excess heat in the body. It was just like adding to an already hot pitta constitution. Now my pitta is much more balanced and I know how to regulate it and take it in different seasons, right? It's like I might not take it in the summer, but in these other seasons it can be really supportive. So just highlighting that as something that's so common now, like ashwagandha, and it's just like everyone should take it if you're stressed. Everyone take it. Well, not necessarily. We need to see how the body responds and what else is going on, just like you laid out for us, which is helpful.
Yeah, that's a great example, and I've heard that from other people and have had a similar experience with ashwagandha, so I think that's a really good one. Maybe where we can go next is to talk about some of the different ways that we can work with herbs, and oftentimes in Ayurveda, we're using formulations like you alluded to, so we're coming up with this combination of different herbs that are working together for a certain intention. And even when we're talking about formulations, we can take that into different forms as well. So often in Ayurvedic medicine, we're using powdered herbal formulations, but there are also situations where we can take tablets that are a certain formulation. And maybe the most important thing to start with when we're figuring out which type of herb works for you is like, what are you actually going to take? Because it's a little more work to add some water to a powder and take that versus just grabbing a couple tablets. So I think that's always an important place to start when we're talking about the differences is what's going to actually work for you and your lifestyle. And taste preference too. I think that can come into play. And I mentioned taste there. That is something that Ayurveda always references as being really important part of herbal formulations as well. When we're tasting the herb, that's helping cue the body into what's coming in and how to digest it and kind of starts that digestive process of working with the herb. So, yeah, there's lots of different things to think on that I'm probably getting a little too granular on per usual. So if you want to stop me and bring me big picture, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really important point. And we were kind of talking about this offline earlier, but it comes up so often with clients where maybe we'll start with a powder because that is the purest form of a plant is to, other than the plant itself, but to have it just ground down into a powder. There's no processing, there's no adding to it. It's simply the pure plant itself. But if you're not gonna take it or spend those few extra minutes to, like, mix it with the water and make sure it's a good consistency and, have it the tablet might just be easier to take and to do that at that time in your life, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is, like, totally acceptable to do that because I have had a lot of clients come to me and be like, "Well, I just stopped taking the powder because I just, like, couldn't do it." And then they feel bad and, like, no, no, you don't have to feel bad. Let's find a different way to take it that does make sense. And that's the other beautiful part about this system is like we can find what's most helpful and supportive in this moment. It doesn't have to be this like black and white. Well, you have to do this or else you don't get to take the medicine, right? Like
Yeah.
let's find a way that feels supportive and helpful for you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, another area that I love to highlight because I've just had so many clients are like, "Oh, I just stopped taking it because I just couldn't find the time."
Yeah.
I'm like, "How can we make it easy?" Right? Like, how can we make this supportive? Because that does fluctuate depending on where you are in life, and that's totally okay too. And I've been there myself.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
um, so yeah, I think understanding the difference in the processing of the herbs, like you're saying, like between a powder and a tincture and a tablet, there's a little bit of different processing between them. And that can have different energetic effects on the body itself. And I think that's an important distinction, especially where we're looking at something like a powder, like I described as being this pure form of the plant. And then a tincture has that added alcohol. Um, and so always considering the energetics of what you're taking and the energetics of that processing and then what you're trying to accomplish, right? And Rita, you were describing earlier offline about the tincture. You've had more training in tinctures than I have. But the difference there being that the tincture has that added alcohol. Well, the alcohol has a heating energetic to it. We know this. And it also has that spreading quality. So if that spreading and that heat is helpful in what you're looking to administer for herbs, that can be a great direction to go. If you're not looking for that, then, a powder or tablet might be a better form to take
Yeah.
in.
And I think that specifically in the Ayurvedic lens, if someone's experiencing a lot of pitta, that's the instance where we maybe want to be a little bit more mindful when it comes to tinctures. I don't work with tinctures a ton. It's not a traditional Ayurvedic way to work with herbs, but I definitely can appreciate that there are certain herbs in certain situations where alcohol is just kind of forceful and it can force some of the medicinal properties out of the herb and it can also force it into the tissues. And in some circumstances, we may need that. But I've had
Mhm.
pitta clients or people experiencing pitta imbalance that have experienced a lot of heat flushing with tinctures. And I think people can just be really sensitive, even though it's such a small amount of alcohol, but it can just be intense for some sensitive constitutions. Yeah.
Like pitta is, right? And pitta is that
Yeah.
sensitive one. So it's kind of a lot of reasons to, think about it and how it's affecting you. Tinctures are more commonly seen in Chinese medicine or naturopathic medicine, whereas Ayurveda, you see more of the powders and that form of the herb
Yeah.
itself.
Yeah. Well, maybe let's transition to teas because that's a really nice, simple, gentle way to work with herbs. If anyone's been listening to this and feeling a little overwhelmed, teas are simple, they're gentle, they can still be very potent, but I often think of teas as it's similar to using herbs as food. So it's something where you can definitely cause some change in the body. Say you're using a digestive tea, right? We can all feel the effects of that and it can be pretty immediate, but it is a little bit of a gentler way to work with herbs. And I think maybe to just give a couple examples of that, because I did want to make sure we gave some really practical takeaways from this episode that someone could go kind of rummage through their spice cabinet and work with. A tea that is very popular in the Ayurvedic world that is what we call, again, that tridoshic, that balancing for all constitutions, digestive support is what's known as CCF tea, so cumin, coriander, and fennel tea. And it's really simple because you can just get each of those 3 spices, each of the 3 seeds at your grocery store and get a good glass mason jar, mix all 3 of them together so you have equal parts, and then that is your go-to digestive tea that you can just put a tablespoon in a diffuser and add your hot water. You can boil it on the stovetop or just do it right in your mug and use that as a digestive supporting tea before a meal if you're trying to get your appetite up or to sip on with a meal. um, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to say about CCF or any other teas that come to mind?
Yeah, CCF is a great place to start. And I usually start all of my clients on that because there usually is some sort of either one, there's some sort of maybe digestive imbalance going on. And I've seen the CCF be really powerful in helping to get them back on the right track. That feels like a more balanced digestive system pretty quickly. But it also is helpful in just having like a go to digestive tea, like just have it in your toolkit. Like, okay, I'm traveling, I'm gonna have bring my CCF with me, and I always have it in my kitchen, like rotating through either as a churna or as a spice blend, like you're saying, as a tea blend. With the seeds. So it is a staple in our kitchen ever since I've learned about it. And if I'm not going to choose anything else, like I'm always having CCF somewhere in the mix in my week. And there are a couple of videos on the
Mm.
Wellness Library of how to make the churna, which is just dry roasting the seeds. And your kitchen will smell amazing, for one. And two, it's going to help you feel really good in your body. And a little bit more detail on the CCF itself. So there's a couple of videos in the Wellness Library that talk about CCF because it is such a wonderful staple Ayurvedic digestive that's like really easy to take in. I feel like in the last 3 years, I've only had one client that maybe didn't have a palate for it.
It's pretty mild.
It's pretty mild,
Yeah.
yeah, like, it's very
Yeah.
approachable. If it's not palatable, we could add in, like, another herb or play around with that, but it's a great place to start, and does a lot for your digestive
Mhm.
enzymes, which is so amazing. Like, yeah, I've had clients that have had like constipation for years and they start drinking CCF and they're like, this tea is amazing. Like, I've had regular bowel movements. So, like, it's just so fascinating to me to see it work so powerfully with using herbs uh, to support in
Yeah.
digestion.
Well, and I think it's such a great example to talk about too, in terms of how herbs can really work with your body. You mentioned digestive enzymes. People will take digestive enzymes, right? And there are definitely situations where that may be warranted. But what's so cool about CCF is that it's working with your body to help your body release those digestive enzymes. So you're not just taking the enzyme as this synthetic, but it's helping your body be able to create more of those digestive enzymes to then break down the food. So it's really cool to think about it that way.
Yeah, and it's a big difference between the medical systems, right? It's like in this case, we're using plants to support the natural function of that system in the body, where synthetics are just adding what the body's trying to create, but still missing that connection, right? That cellular
Mm,
change that plants allows the body to
yeah.
make, instead of just covering it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll share one more really simple. Again, I think of it as fairly tridoshic for most, is for periods, and especially if you're someone who's prone to crampier periods. I really like ginger fennel tea. So this combination, we put them together because fennel's a little bit more cooling, where ginger's a little bit more warming. And part of the benefits there is ginger, you were going to see these antispasmodic effects from this herbal combination. It's also going to just help with flow, and that specifically that downward flow that we call apana vayu, letting that menstrual blood release down and out. And so that can be a really simple one. Most people, I think, have fennel and ginger in their house, and there's different ways. You could use whole ginger, you could use like dried ginger root, but that's a really simple one that can be supportive to bring in throughout your bleed. That some super simple kitchen medicine, things you already have on hand. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think most of these people are gonna have, and you could start trying it today, and right, and you can travel with it, you can take it with you, you can make a little blend and like have it as your monthly period
Yeah.
medicine that you
Yeah.
take.
Yeah, and the other thing I think I wanted to talk about with we're talking about tea and infusions is I really, really love doing mineral boosting overnight infusions. And I think this is fun to talk about because I actually think a lot of people don't know that there are herbs that have high mineral properties and that we can use herbs as this really bioavailable way to bring in some mineral supplementation. I think there's a lot of conversation about this because unfortunately we're seeing the depletion that we are in our soil, which therefore I think we're seeing an increased prevalence of mineral deficiencies. And I really love to work with herbs in this way where I'll do an infusion overnight. So in a mason jar, I'll use some of these mineral rich herbs like red raspberry leaf and nettles and milky oats. And I'll do a hot water infusion and add some boiled water to it, let that steep overnight, not sip overnight, and then strain it the next day. And it's this really nice mineral rich concoction that also, again, we're looking at the specific qualities, and those are the herbs that I've been using because they are a little bit more astringent, which is a quality I'm always having to bring into my body. So again, that combination may not work for everybody, but I think just really wanted to introduce that idea that that's another way that we can work with herbs, again, kind of thinking like herbs as food and bringing in some little bit of a mineral boost.
Totally. I love using this for myself and with clients, and I've had so many clients turn to this and just really enjoy it and feel like, oh, I actually
Mm.
feel hydrated now, and I actually feel like I'm getting in the nutrition that I've been lacking and that I've been missing. And it's such a great way to do it. And just like you're saying that steeping it overnight, you're really pulling out that deep, rich potency of the herb. And so for me, I use this a lot, especially with training, right? If I'm having a higher exercise load, I'm definitely using this to restore my blood and restore my blood tissue. And have found it really helpful. And just the fact that it
Mm.
feels good. Like it feels like this is how I take my vitamins, right? Like this is like where I'm getting a lot of my nutrients from. And what's nice, even we're coming into the warmer months, is that steeping it overnight and drinking it room temperature the next day, you don't have to have this like hot tea when it gets to be hot outside. You can have this nice like room temperature herbal water that you can just sip throughout the day. So I think it's a nice way to take the herbs without being overly potent. And the other one I would add that I really love to have in mind is rose
Oh, yeah.
petals and rose hips. It's just aromatic too, so I feel like it soothes my nervous system, but the rose is like cooling and astringent, but also has a lot of iron in it, and I think that it feels really good in my body and as a pitta constitution, especially after a bleed, right? And I'm trying to like replenish those iron stores. I found it really helpful as just like a recovery drink after travel, after exercise, like having it kind of in your rotation of vitamins and minerals.
Yeah, I've never had someone that I've recommended these to that didn't absolutely love them, so yeah.
Yes, same.
Yeah, I do it most days, and if life happens and I've gone a few days without it, I'll really start to crave it. My body really misses it. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I've even worked recently with a breastfeeding mom, and she found it really supportive, and we obviously, like, went through herbs that would be helpful for her given, lactation and, the time in life that she was in, being postpartum. She was about 5 months postpartum and was feeling
Mhm.
depleted, like feeling just like low energy and some digestive upset. And she started incorporating this along with other things. But this was one that she found like really, really helpful in allowing her to feel hydrated and nourished. And it's interesting. This could be like a whole another tangent, but what she shared with me, and just as a mom, she just always was like, am I getting enough? Am I giving them
Mm.
enough? Like, do I have enough? And this was such a nice way that she said she felt like she was just getting that extra that she felt she was kind of lacking through food and through
Mm.
diet.
Yeah. The word nourishing is what always comes up when we're talking about these infusions. I think that's a great example of where that can be really supportive. Yeah.
Yeah, we're being like nourished through the mother, right? Through Mother Earth, and this is how she's providing and we're able to
Yeah.
receive.
Yeah, definitely. Well, maybe I'll pivot us a bit and talk about this other aspect of Ayurvedic herbalism that I think is really fascinating, which is this concept of using what we call an anupan or a carrier. And it's this idea that sometimes when we're using a certain herb for a certain intention, we can bring in a certain carrier that really has two purposes. One is that it can help direct the herb to a certain tissue. And the other is that it's going to bring in certain qualities. So, say we're a little bit concerned about an herb that really is a good fit for a person for a lot of reasons, but we're concerned about it being a little bit too drying. We can bring in a carrier like ghee that's going to add some lubricating properties to it. Like, for example, triphala comes to mind there, that triphala can be so supportive for many aspects of elimination, but for some constitutions, it can be a little too drying. So we can bring in this carrier of ghee that will balance off the slightly drying properties of triphala, but it can also, these carriers will drive it to certain tissues. So ghee, when we take ghee with herbs, it has this affinity to bring the herb into the deeper layers of tissues and can be really supportive when we're talking about women's health, where we know the reproductive tissues are the last layer, the seventh layer. And so when we think about these certain carriers for these women's health herbs, ghee comes to mind. I also really like aloe vera juice, as that has an affinity for the lymph and the blood and the reproductive tissues and can be a carrier to those areas. So it's just a really fascinating layer, I think, to Ayurvedic herbalism that and that I think can be a little strange to people, like, "Oh, you want me to take this herb with pomegranate juice? Like, you want me to take this herb with honey?" But those are some examples of some different carriers that have an affinity for certain organ systems and also bring in their own special quality.
Yeah, I like to think of it as, the carrier is this like little
Mm.
vehicle and it's like opens the door and it's like, "Hey, come on in. We're going down to the uterus. Like, come with me." So I picture this like little car that's just like zooming around in the body and it's like, "I'm on a mission to get to this location." And like, "Come with me, herbs." So I think it's like such a fun way to think about using these in such a targeted way, and obviously we use this a lot, right, in working with clients, and I've done this a lot for myself too. Just such a fun way to understand the power of both the carrier and the herb that you're using and how to work with them together. It is such a beautiful and unique aspect of Ayurveda and really highlights the understanding that they had in understanding plants and how to work with them together and not just like isolating, well, I can have this ghee, but if I have ghee with this herb is also going to help this area, this tissue of the body. Let's
Mm.
put them together. And I think it adds such a powerful, it's just a much more potent way of being targeted with herbs. Yeah, I love it. I think it's so fascinating. And to see in different seasons too, right? Like the aloe and the pomegranate being more cooling and having that affinity for the blood and reproductive tissue. That's a great option for like pittas in the summer who are having excess bleeding and like have a lot of heat in the body. Like this is going to help cool down the blood, and cooling down the blood is how we can
Mm.
help cool down the system. So understanding the energetics of the season along with it can be, just as powerful in when you're using these.
Yeah. It's so cool. Like, I'm pausing just 'cause there's so many different I wanna go deep, but I'm
Yeah.
trying to be mindful of what would be the most important thing to communicate here. Because I mean, there's so many herbs I could geek
I
out
know.
on now, and, like, you were talking about ghee,
Like
I'm so obsessed with ghee on so many levels. But I think
Yeah,
what's super
yeah.
cool is there's this what we talked about, like, taking a little ghee with our powdered herb with some warm water, but then there's this whole other aspect of medicinal ghees where the herb is formulated, like, there's this decoction of the herb, and then you cook the ghee, and then you cook them together and cook out the water, and you have this herb that's cooked inside of this ghee, and that is, like, a whole 'nother level of medicine that can carry the herbs, like, really deep into the tissues, into the reproductive tissues, and those are have you ever made
Yeah.
medicinal ghee?
I did once. I was gonna ask you if you've done it. It is a lot of work. It was like a process, and it makes me have so much appreciation for being able to buy it. As yeah, for just making it for myself, it's a lot of work for like a small batch, and so cool though to like really connect with the herbs in that way. And like I did an ashwagandha ghee.
Mm.
Um and it was fascinating just to, like, understand and work with the ghee a little bit more and work with the ashwagandha and, like, work with them together and just see how they cook down and how they communicate to each other as they're going through this process. Definitely gave me a lot of appreciation for people that do this for a living, to share with other people. Um, it's really beautiful, and I think what I also enjoyed about the process, even though I only did it that one time because I was like, I don't have time, this is so much work." I'm happy to spend my money on someone who's making it. But I think it also, yeah, just allowed that opportunity to connect with the plants and
Mm.
really just highlights, Ayurveda's understanding of how we can infuse the ghee with this, more potent herb with this purpose,
Mhm.
a specific purpose. So yeah, it was powerful.
Yeah.
What was your experience like?
I mean, truly everything you just said. I've done it twice. I've made shatavari ghee,
Mm.
which is a formulation that I love very much, and then I've also made panchakola ghee.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, I just completely second everything you said. That it was so cool, and I will continue to make medicinal ghees throughout life. I love medicine making in that way, and I've always learned so much, but also when I first started learning about it, I was like, I'm gonna make these. I'm gonna make these for all my clients, and, like, I don't know that
Yeah.
I see myself doing that. Um, but yeah, it was a really great learning experience.
It definitely made me feel like, "Oh, I'm a witch, like, I'm actually a witch," right? Like, I
Oh, sure.
don't know if you've
Yeah.
watched Harry Potter, if that's been in your life, but, yeah, I felt like, "Wow, I'm actually, like, a wizard and, like, making this concoction and using plants, and they have this powerful energetic effect," and, yeah, it's kind of fun to think about using herbs, which I feel that way anyways with, like, when I'm putting together my mineral infusion of, like,
Sure. Yeah.
blending all these herbs together. So I think it's kind of fun and playful and like a neat way to connect with the plants.
Oh, for sure. I call it my kitchen witchin' whenever I'm cooking or making up herbal formulations or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's yeah. Bryce will be like, "What are you up to today?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm doing some kitchen witching."
That's
So,
fun.
yeah. Yeah. Well, let's see. Let's talk about ways that we can use herbs beyond ingesting them and talking about some more topical uses with herbal oils and some kind of soaking options as well with things like sitz baths. And those can be really powerful ways to work with herbs. And I think sometimes we don't think about that. We're just thinking about herbs in terms of ingesting. And I know you and I share very similar sentiments when it comes to the magic of herbal oils and doing practices like abhyanga, which is this massage that you can give to yourself using a warmed up herbal oil. And something I was thinking about very recently, I was just wrapping up my Ayurvedic postpartum doula training. And part of that is we were learning how to give somebody an abhyanga, one of these herbal oil massages. And it was really interesting because I was paired up with somebody who, similar to myself, hadn't had experience in body work. And so even though I was receiving the Abhyanga massage, it was kind of broken up. Like you would get some instructions and then we'd kind of pause and like focus on that and so on. And we were using Dashamula oil that we had made the day before. And Dashamula is like this really powerful herbal blend for supporting vata and the nervous system and anxiety. And it was so fascinating to me how relaxed I felt at the end of receiving this Abhyanga because it wasn't I mean, it'd be no surprise to feel relaxed receiving an Abhyanga massage, but like I said, it was someone's first time doing body work. It was, like, kind of broken up with instruction. I do think my partner, if she's listening, is a natural, but, it it was just this huge reminder for me of, like, wow, there is so much medicinal power to just getting herbal oil on our bodies, and that really the more that we do that, the deeper these herbs can penetrate into our tissues that way. And it's just a really, really uh, powerful way that we can support our bodies and something that I'm always recommending. I think every single client I work with, I talk about an herbal massage oil at one point or another because it's just so helpful for preventative health to support our muscles and our joints and our skin. And that's not even talking about the massage benefits and the circulation and lymphatic aspects. Just getting that herbal oil on the body is so powerful.
Yeah, it's just this other way of administering herbs to those deep tissues, right? We think about oil has this penetrating quality. It is penetrating the skin, and the skin is the largest organ on the body, right? It's absorbing all of the energy from those plants that are used in that oil, and the oil is that carrier. It's helping to administer the herbs to the skin and then to those deeper tissues. So it is, yeah, it's so beautiful, and we could talk about Abhyanga for days, uh, and we
For sure.
have before. But I mean, I just love it for that reason that it is so multi-layered in the benefits that you're receiving. And to your point, doing it once, yes, will make a difference. Having it as part of like your regular toolkit for preventative health has so much impact and so much power in maintaining that vitality and maintaining your immunity and longevity of health, right?
Mm.
Which is what I think everyone is seeking is like maintaining, you know, extending that longevity of feeling really good. Yeah, Abhyanga is a beautiful way to even start to explore different herbs and how they feel on your body, and just starting with that base sesame oil if you're not sure where to go, and then trying combinations that you can buy and find online with different herbs that will tell you what they can specifically help with, and kind of targeting certain areas. Working with one of us or a practitioner or somebody that, knows how to steer you in the right direction of where to start. But it's powerful, and think about the sensory experience within that as well. Skin is a large sense organ, so you're absorbing all of that, but you're also, think about all of that, the aromatics of those herbs. You're experiencing that calming to the nervous system
Mm,
just by absorbing it through the nose and through the skin. And I
mm.
think that's, part of the power of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so powerful for the nervous system and anxiety and sleep issues and so many other areas. But those are the few that like really come to mind that it can be so supportive for. And I think going back to your point of just really encouraging people to dip their toes in and try this out, I think if you aren't working with somebody who can recommend an herbal oil specific to you, coming back to those qualities that we talked about, and oil itself is going to be naturally a little bit heating and lubricating, of course. So when we're looking at the herbs that are in the oil, I think a good way to think of it is are these going to be heating or are they cooling? And are you somebody who runs hot and you have a hot constitution, or is it summertime? And if those are true, then we want to bring in maybe herbs that are a little cooler. Where the opposite is true and you're always cold and you have poor circulation and it's fall or winter time, then we want to bring in some herbal oils that have more warming properties. And that's a really nice simple way to kind of guide you, because a lot of times when you're looking at websites or people's formulations, they will use those words warming or cooling or soothing, or so really just thinking qualitative in that lens.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great place to start. Mhm.
Well, like you said, we could talk about Abhyanga all day, every day. And again, I think we are probably, I'll have to at some point actually count how many of these episodes we sneak talking about Abhyanga in, because it's probably most.
Maybe we'll have to do like a prize or something. Like if somebody like can tally up how many, or like guess like how many you win a jar of jelly beans. No, I don't know what it is. Something.
Then we'll make, Brittany and I will do some kitchen witching
Yeah.
together and we'll make you an herbal ghee. We'll take spend the hours to do it. Um, yeah, so much more we could say on herbal oils, but the last main area that comes to mind for me in terms of ways to work with herbs, and this isn't a traditionally Ayurvedic remedy when we talk about what comes out of the ancient Ayurvedic texts, but I do think it's a really important one to bring up when we're on the topic of women's health. And that is using herbs in more of a soaking or steaming method. So, an easy, simple, gentle way to work with herbs that way is through sitz baths, where we're essentially making up a strong tea and then having some sort of basin that essentially is big enough to fit your hips, that you can pour that warm herbal tea into and bring the often soothing or maybe cooling properties of those herbs to that area. And that can be really supportive when we're experiencing any irritation or yeast infections, hemorrhoids, UTIs. I think that it's a really important one when we're talking about postpartum care, and whether there's, some tearing or some stitches or even just that irritation, that can be such a soothing practice. And if you don't have, a basin that you can use that way, you can do just using a bathtub. You can bring in herbs in the same way. It's a little bit less economical because you have to use a little bit more herb to get at least a few inches of the tub filled that you can soak in. But that I think is, again, like another really gentle, easy way that we can work with herbs that can be so potent that we can use I often will use this phrase like plants before pills. Like pills have a purpose, but if we're having some irritation or some kind of issue going on, we can use herbs in that way, and use things that are really natural and can work with the body to regain some balance of the vaginal microbiome, or again to soothe the tears or whatever's going on there.
Yeah, I think I've heard it more commonly with postpartum, but it can be, which is so important. And I think it can be a great use for, these other imbalances that you're describing, and just having this as part of your toolkit for when you are experiencing imbalance or looking to address something specifically with the uterine or the vaginal area. Because yeah, these herbs can, I mean, that is a sensitive area, right? And these herbs, a little bit can go a long way in it in the direction of healing, no matter what you're experiencing. And on that note too, even just adding herbs to your bath, right? What I like to do is steep, like a French press of herbs, and then you pour that water into your bathtub and you kind of get the aroma, you get the energetics of it without having it be messy. And having herbs clog up your tub, just make that French press or steep some, right? I'll just steep some like I would a regular tea and then pour that in my bath. Can be a nice way to, experience the plant energetics. And then another one that, is not traditionally Ayurvedic, but is commonly used, I know you have, and has certainly a place here in women's health and supporting reproductive health and the uterus, is yoni steaming. And I feel really lucky. John made me a seat a few years ago out of some wood that he had, and so I have like a little wooden stool with a hole in the middle. So I'll put the pot underneath with the herbs and sit on top of it and allow that steam. The plant energetics will move through the steam and go up into the vaginal canal and the uterus, and like all the areas you're describing, Rita, too, right? Just like having that steam get up into that area that can just be a little bit more closed. It can be helpful to open up that channel and allow things to move down and out. So even if
Mm.
you're having stagnation or painful periods or inflammation, or if you're having uh, irregular cycles, even this can help regulate that apana vayu, like you're saying, helping things move down and out as opposed to getting stuck in that area.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool that John made you that seat. That's really special. I was kind of laughing as you were saying that because I should show what I use. It's like a pretty makeshift. I took like an old crate and kind of made a seat on it.
Mm.
And I will say yoni steaming, it's something that I personally have used more ceremoniously. I think I talked about this a little bit on the one of our episodes recently, but it's something I've used ceremoniously. I tend towards excess heat in my womb space. And so, where even though we can slightly tweak the steam with certain herbs, steam in itself is going to be heating and possibly a bit drying, but that heat is going to open things up. And for me, as I mentioned, I'm always bringing in more astringency to like tone and tighten. So, to put that in a different way, like if you are having heavier bleeds or like heavy hot bleeds, regular yoni steaming potentially isn't the best fit, but it can be really supportive for more of like the vata or kapha symptoms, like you had mentioned. Or I think, again, like ceremoniously and within reason can be supportive. And I think just we've talked in other episodes, so I won't go too into it, but I think it can be just a really special experience. And yeah, I think it's just pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, I found it helpful in a similar way, where I don't do it after every bleed, but I've found it
Mhm.
in when
Mhm.
I've felt drawn to bring some attention to that area and feel like I want to bring some, nurturing and some awareness and some a deeper connection to my uterus and to my womb space. I found it really helpful for that. Can also be really helpful after trauma, after loss, after, after a birth at some point, right? Knowing working with someone to explore that timing could be helpful too, and making sure that your body is ready for that heat.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I think, it is
Mhm.
this opportunity to
Yeah.
explore connecting with our womb space that's intimate but not
Mhm.
sexual, if that makes sense. Like it's, you're connecting with these deeper part of yourself, and these like inner chakras are center, right? Like women have their center of gravity is in their hips and their womb, right? And so we can keep a lot of tension and tightness there, and this can help, like you're saying, open up those channels, which helps open up the rest of us, right? Because we can get very closed and very protective of that area without maybe even realizing it. This can help to kind of soften and nurture those reproductive channels.
Yeah. Yeah, and our creativity. Our creativity is so interconnected with our womb space and the flow that's happening there, and that's something that maybe maybe we'll do a full other episode on that sometime, those energetic aspects that are connected to the womb, because that's something that I think sometimes we can think about womb health in general as only something we need to bring in if we're having physical ailments in that area, but personally, I have found that sometimes when I bring in some womb treatments, it's not physical. It ends up being like this rush of creativity or this more mental emotional clarity that can come. So it's interesting stuff. And I think herbs again are kind of bringing us back to the topic here. I think how you described working with yoni steaming in that way and having it again be this like intentional way to just connect more with our bodies. I think that's how I think about herbs in general is it's this opportunity to pause and tune into what qualities are in excess because there's always going to be something in excess. Are we cold? Are we hot? Are we dry? Are we oily? Are we mobile? Are we heavy? Are we light? And then looking at, okay, I'm feeling this certain way, so these certain herbs can bring in and help me to balance that. This saying we always come back to that like increases like and opposites create balance. So,
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and the other one I would add, depositories can be a really nice way to use herbs. I even used a couple this week. I like to do coconut oil and then
hmm,
as the base, and then whatever herbs you're using to target. Like I was having some excess heat and inflammation, and like coconut oil and lavender felt really, really nice. And what's nice about the suppositories is, the body absorbs that oil, so it's absorbing those plant energetics, and there's a specific way to make them, right? You're not having the dry herb in there, but you like boil it down with the oil and whatnot, and go through the process, so you are connecting with the herbs as you're making them, the suppositories, but I found that to be a really helpful in part of my self-care, uh toolkit. I don't wanna say routine because it's not routine. I'll use it in a very intentional way when it makes sense. It's a nice option to have, as part, which I didn't know was a thing until,
mm,
like, later in life,
hmm,
and it's these I think all of these practices aren't really something we're taught in,
yeah.
like, sex ed. Like, they don't teach you how to care for your uterus and reproductive parts like this. It's like, yeah, and unfortunate that we learn it so much later in life, because I think it can be really supportive in just a way that feels connected to ourselves and to the earth, very intimately.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned suppositories. I haven't worked with them a ton. I have used a ghee suppository. It was a shatavari ghee suppository that was kind of experimenting with and just curious about. But I have talked with clients before who are experiencing vaginal dryness. And I think that that is, like, again, it's this really natural way that we can treat these qualities that are in excess of the body before bringing in more heavier synthetics that sometimes there's a time and place for, but it's really, yeah, it's, again, I think I'm going back to the way that we started this episode and talking about how plants have evolved with humans as these sentient beings that have taken care of us, and that's really this amazing gift that we have is living with these plants and these herbs and having that available to us. And I'm glad that we're putting this out there. And I think that it's maybe for some people just introducing to that concept. I'm hoping it gets people excited about herbs, and I'm hoping that it helps people feel maybe, you're not going to jump into vaginal steaming or like suppositories, but like experimenting with some tea, or maybe you are interested in that and working with a practitioner who can guide you. And I think, like you mentioned earlier, in our wellness library, we do have some supportive classes as well. But it's something I'm so passionate about, is just that these herbs are around us. They want to help us, and they're available to help us. It can just help people in so many different ways.
Yeah, you are not alone in your passion for these herbs. Like I'm with you, but I feel like I can feel your passion for herbs the way that I feel for ultra running.
Do you have an update for us? Did she finish?
Let me.
We've been
let me
talking for a
see.
while, so
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to check. Let me refresh this page and see. She's probably already finished, is my guess. Let's see where her tracker is. Oh my goodness, she finished. Yes, she is. Her dot is bouncing, so she is at the finish. I'm trying to see if it tells me when. I'll have to go back and watch the live stream of the finish because it probably like just happened. It's just so exciting.
amazing.
Yeah, look at that.
Amazing. Amazing. I wonder if she's using herbs.
I don't know. I kind of want to ask her, because if she's not, I would like to see if she'd like some.
Right? Yeah. I'm sure after, what was it? How many miles did you say?
254 is
Wow.
the total.
Yeah. Her body could use some abhyanga and
Yes, I know.
maybe some shatavari, some ashwagandha. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there's some athletes that I just want to like dip them in oil. And in this context it makes sense, but if you heard me say that like elsewhere, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But I'll say it to John. I'm like, oh, I just want to like dip them in oil and like re-nourish their body in so many ways. Yeah, there's like so many benefits to helping like athlete recovery that these herbs like we're talking about and practices, I've just seen it help a lot of athletes that I work with.
For sure.
And myself, I've felt it too. So
Yeah.
I wish everyone knew about this.
Well, and maybe this is me not wanting to stop talking about herbs and finding ways to keep the conversation going here. But I was working with a client this morning who is transitioning into menopause, and we were talking about that through the elemental lens, and how when we are in our bleeding years, we have these sex hormones that naturally give us these earth and water qualities, estrogen and progesterone. You can think of these like earthy, watery qualities to balance out stress. And then we lose that as we go into menopause. And, that's a whole other conversation. But like, I was thinking about that as you were describing athletes, right? Like anytime we have, whether it's this life transition and it's this time of life that our body is changing, or whether there's certain physical activity and we're running 250 miles, or we're experiencing certain stressors, like there's just certain life events that are going to increase certain elements and certain qualities in our bodies. And herbs is just such a powerful way to help come back to that homeostasis a little bit more. So yeah, I think it's there's just always an opportunity, whether it's supporting longevity going forward and overall health maintenance and preventative health, or there's certain qualities that are imbalanced that we want to bring back. It's powerful stuff. And also, again, something people can hopefully find accessible and start to explore and play with.
Yeah, what I've learned over the years in having a husband who takes climbing very seriously and like performance very seriously and like dedicated to his projects. And I've learned that if there's any way to get him to try out some of these practices, all I have to say is, do you want to improve your climbing? Do you want to be able to climb when you're 75? And he's like, okay, I'll do it. So, and it makes a difference. And if he like enjoys the things he's incorporated and has noticed a difference in how his body feels and how he feels emotionally, and it's made a difference. And so I just know, like, for athletes, it's like, do you want to improve your performance? Do you want to like show up race day and feel like you've done everything you possibly can? Well, these things, these practices and tools are part of that. And it can go a really, really long way in terms of longevity in the sport and longevity in your health. And I think that I've just learned like that's how athletes think, right?
Sure.
How can I be a better runner or climber, whatever?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So if you're out there, come find me.
Well, anything else that we missed? I mean, obviously there's so much more that could be said, but anything else on your mind?
This feels complete to me. I think this was a great place to start. Obviously, there's a lot of tangents we could have gone on, but I think we did a good job staying on track. And I am thinking, like, I wonder, this has come up a lot with clients too, is just even going down like the perimenopause conversation and like starting to think about, I don't know, just addressing that in a conversation might be nice sometime soon. Because yeah, I think it's even I saw a client this morning and what they were told by their doctor was just like appalling to me of what their options were. And yeah, I think it's worth like bringing some light to, because I know it's on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that soon for sure. It's been coming up a little bit more in my conversations as well. And I think Ayurveda has a whole lot to offer there. So yeah, more to
Yeah.
come.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Stay tuned. Thanks, Rita.
Yeah. Thanks, Brittni. This was fun.
If you enjoyed today's episode, it would mean the world to us and help support our work if you'd like, share, leave a review, as well as subscribe to our podcast on whichever platform you use. If you're looking for more connection or would like to support this podcast, we'd love to have you join our Patreon for $5 a month. Here you'll get bonus episodes and access to our community chat Q&A.
And don't forget to check out our wellness library, which is filled with self-guided classes, kitchen tutorials, herbal recipes, and more Ayurvedic practices, all for just $5 a month. Thanks so much for being here with us. Until next time, be well.